Hey, we're here. We're ready.
Mhm.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Utah Parents United September class. Our topic tonight is how to effectively advocate for your child with your teacher and your principal. And Nicole, why don't you tell us a little bit about why Nicole picked our topic tonight, why you picked our topic tonight?
Well, it was a group decision, but what we found was that even before school started, we started to get emails and phone calls and Instagram messages and Facebook messages of parents going to back to school nights or going to meet the teacher nights and walking into their children's classrooms and finding things that they felt were questionable or that might violate the law or that made them very uncomfortable. And so we started to get a lot of questions of what do I do about this? Like, how do I handle this? Like, this isn't right. And so then I actually personally had an experience where I was meeting with my teacher and had a similar thing happen to me. And so I had the opportunity to uh, contact the state superintendent and just say, hey, what do you want me to do about this? This is the situation that I'm facing. And she kind of coached me through it on what the best steps of action would be. And we looked at it as a training opportunity as I talked to her of like, okay, not only is she training me in how to appropriately handle the situation, but now she's training me so that I can turn around and train other parents and help other parents across the state to understand what happens when you find something uncomfortable in your classroom or in your school and how to still preserve that relationship with your teacher and the principal. And so we actually we changed the topic of this class last minute. We said, you know what we really need is a class on how to teach parents on how to have uncomfortable conversations. Because there are two parts to this. One is that we love our teachers. Like, I love my kids' teachers. They're awesome. I don't want to do anything that makes them uncomfortable, and I don't want to harm the relationship at all. And then two, as Utahns, we tend to not want to rock the boat at all. We tend to just feel like, oh, I want to keep the peace, so I better not say anything. So we suffer in silence because we're too afraid to say something.
Mhm.
And so we didn't want that to be the case with parents. We didn't want parents to feel like they had to choose between harming the relationship with the child or with the teacher and having subversive content in the classroom. So we really tried to figure out how we could navigate through these difficult conversations to try to come up with a win-win for everyone. So
Yeah.
that's how this class came about, and it's very timely because you should see seriously the emails, the phone calls. Like, I'll get a message like, this was in my kid's classroom in this school district, or I'll get pictures from, I got a picture from a sweet dad in Murray, and he's like, Nicole, my kid walked into class and this is what he saw. What do I do? I was like, oh, okay, this is urgent. We need to really help parents because it's a real thing that we're facing.
I agree. And I think one thing is, we all have different circumstances for our kids. Between the UPU board, we have around 30 children, and some of us homeschool, some of us do online school, some of us do public school, and a combination of everything in between. I have all my kids in one form or another are enrolled in the public school education system. And I found some good opportunities for them this year there, but I don't, I'm not ready to pull my kids. So how do I navigate the public education system and still make sure that my kids have the experiences that I do find beneficial within that system? And yet I have the ability to handle these conflicts and these controversial topics that come up and make sure our schools and our teachers are following the law. Another thing that I thought about a lot as we were preparing for this class is the reality that we know that education is lopsided. We're seeing this every day. We see it from the national agendas that are driving into our classrooms, where our kids curriculum is being infiltrated with transformative SEL and DEI and CRT and gender ideology. And it seems the only voices that are actually talking to teachers, talking to administrators, and talking to the state superintendent are voices that support the ideologies that are being driven by the UEA and the NEA right into our schools. And if we don't step up and start countering that voice and sharing another perspective and talking about how our children are feeling marginalized, disenfranchised, uncomfortable, that their free speech is being limited and stifled, and their rights are being diminished in the public education system. If we don't stand up and have that, this conversation continues to be one-sided. And it's hard, and it takes a lot of courage to do that. And that's why we wanted to share with you some of the things that we've done. Utah Parents United, we got started, it's been about 2 years that we've been advocating in Utah. And man, we've had some really hard topics that we've navigated and we've discussed. And we've been able to meet with people like State Superintendent Sid Dixon, who we do not agree on a lot of things, but we still can have a conversation with her, and she's now hearing another side to the story. We have to share the story of the other side. And we want to give you the courage and empower you to be the parent that goes in and talks to that teacher. I'm going to share a story a little bit later about my first experience and some of the regrets I had. But the first slide we're going to go to tonight is one of our slogans in Utah Parents United. And it says, "We believe kindness is a strength, not a weakness." And this is something that we have learned through our years of advocacy, that sometimes it is much more difficult to stay composed and to be kind and to be respectful in the communication. That is hard to do. And we really brought someone here tonight that we feel really exemplifies that ability to show kindness as a strength, as she has advocated for children all across Utah. And Nicole's going to give a little introduction to our first speaker, who's going to talk about this topic. So go ahead and introduce.
Okay, you got to stand next to me with your microphone.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll switch the microphone over.
So our
to Jen.
first speaker, her name is Jen Brown, and she is renowned across the state. She runs the Utah Citizens for the Constitution. She just does a lot of amazing things. She's helped pass legislation making pornography a public health crisis, and making sure that when cell phones are sold, that the pornography filter is turned on that cell phone. So she's just done a lot of amazing advocacy at a really big level. But what's even better than that is that she knows how to advocate at the classroom level and with the principal. And the best story that I can share about Jen, because I know Jen personally, our kids go to the same school. And I was in the office because I'm the PTO president of the school now, long story. But I was in the office, and in walks Jen. And I suddenly made the connection, like, oh my gosh, Jen is here to talk to the principal about Summit. Like, and I looked at Jen and I was like, do you want me to stay as like backup or anything? And she's like, oh no, I got this. And so I was like, okay. So I see her walk by into the principal's office, and I was like, oh, this will be interesting, because I knew what Jen was going to say. Like I knew that she was going to cover topics like Summit is breaking this law, and it's breaking this law and this law, and we're going to have to sue the school district, and we're going to have to do this and this. And so I was like, okay, that's going to be an interesting conversation. So the next day, I'm at the school putting together a balloon arch for back to school or whatever. And the principal's working with me, and she's like, oh, I just really like that Jen Brown. She's just so sweet and so great. I'm like, I know, right? So only Jen Brown can walk into a meeting where she says that you're breaking this law and this law and this law, and we're going to sue the school district, and this is a problem. And the principal walks out like, we're best friends. Like, I really like that girl. She is awesome. So I figured she would be the best person to lead us off with how to advocate and do it respectfully and still preserve the relationship, and, you know, discuss the details, but still be friends. So without any more delay, we'll bring up the wonderful one and only Jen Brown.
Jen Brown. There you go. Here's your mic.
Thank you.
And there's the
Should I clip on? Well, that was a very generous introduction. Thank you. Should I just hold it? Okay, I'll just hold it. Well, it is so good to be with all of you tonight, and everybody that's online. Good evening. So as Nicole said, my name is Jen Brown. I live in Bountiful. I have 5 sons, and they are all in public school. I've got elementary, junior high, and high school. But I got involved in the arena of public policy about 13 years ago. And it is about protecting children. That's how I got involved. And I have been worked on several different issues, a lot of things of protecting children from sexual content. But what I have found is that when I first got involved a while ago, so a long time ago, I felt like we need to be really, kind of blunt, really forward, because we are standing for these correct principles. But sometimes you could feel contention. And I have been taught, and I feel like I've even been taught from above, that that isn't the way that we're to do things. And so if there's contention, then I try to, if I can't lower the contention, then I just have the motto of, I need to just end that situation just as nicely as I can if you can't bring it around. If there's contention when you're trying to work with somebody, you truly cannot solve a problem. It puts a barrier up. And so it just cannot be there. And so the main ways that we don't have contention is the tone of our voice. We can still speak very clearly. We can feel very strongly about certain things. We don't have to beat around the bush, but we need to do it with a tone of voice that just remains calm and kind. And just that tone of voice, it can make a big difference on what happens in the atmosphere in that room. And so that's one thing that I really try to work on. Another thing that I've made for a personal goal for myself is to never say negative things about people. And unless we're just talking strictly about how somebody feels about a specific topic, then that needs to be discussed sometimes. But as far as just any kind of like personal attacks or, things about somebody's personality or something, I've just really set a goal that that's just off limits. And none of us are perfect, but I have really tried that. I just do not talk negatively about other people. And it makes a big difference. It helps to keep more respect with other people. And if other people feel that way about you, then they trust you more and you're earning respect from them. And so, I mean, if somebody on a topic, they feel this way, I mean, you can say that as, we know that they take this position on this topic. And, is there a way that we can work with them on it? What are we going to do about that? But don't ever get into a habit of getting together with people and just saying, I don't like that person, or they make me so mad and I don't, I just don't like them. We just need to try to not have that kind of verbiage. And it makes a difference. It helps us to be more charitable to other people. And so, like the instance that Nicole had just mentioned, I did go to the school to advocate for my child, and I did talk about some, but we just started by trying to get to know each other. And, that conversation ended up just being easy because we grew up on the same street and we didn't even know it. And so that just immediately gave us a connection with each other. And so I was able to talk with her about that. And then I talked with her about my concerns with my third son and academically, where I felt like it wasn't where I wanted him to be. So another thing when we're advocating is that you want to talk about, say things like, this is how I feel, and this is what I'm concerned about. As a mother, I feel like he's not doing well because of this. Instead of saying things like, I do not like what the teacher is doing, and putting it outward, you express your own emotions. You say, this upset me because, let me describe to you why that really hurt our feelings as a family, why I was upset as a mother. And just always keep it from that where people aren't feeling like you're attacking them, but you're expressing your own emotions and expressing your own experiences. And when you do it that way, people, their eyes are open and they don't feel in a defensive posture. If people feel defensive, then it's hard to connect with them and to be able to solve problems. And so that's a really important thing is to not say things that people feel like they're being attacked. Instead, just express your own emotions and how it made you feel. And that is very important. So with that conversation that I had with the principal, that's what I did. I talked to her about my concerns with where my son was academically, my concerns about the screen time. And I brought several articles with me. So that brings me to my next point, is we're always going to have more success when we've done our homework and we're very well prepared. And that brings respect to us, that they can tell that we have taken time to understand the topic very well. And I brought her several peer-reviewed articles that talk about screens and some of the impact that screens can have. And so it wasn't just me saying it. I had a lot of backup that I was able to show her, and she took some pictures of them, and I said, we can certainly make copies to give those to you. But it's really important that we do our homework, that we understand what we're advocating for. We understand laws that we can talk about. And I did talk about the parental rights law, that truly the parents are in charge of their child's education. And when I had my same Nick back in 5th grade, they were giving him a lot of screens back then. And I remember I said to the teacher, I don't like how many screens there are. And he was still in elementary. And I said, I'd like him to have packets where he has to write and he can work more. And the teacher just said, well, I'm not doing paper packets. And I just let that go back then. I would never let it go now. So I have learned in this time that we really have to be advocates for our children. And that now I would have said, do you know what? Let me just show you a couple of the state laws about parental rights, and that I am in charge of my son's education, and that we also have the right to be given a commensurate assignment for whatever reason, basically, whatever our set of belief is, that we feel that our child will do better with something else, we have the right to be given that. And so I had that epiphany this summer, because they were just giving Nick so many screens, even in elementary. And so he was gaming part of the time. It's just ridiculous. And then they want to blame the student, well, Nick's gaming. Like, so you give him a computer that has games on it. He's an 11-year-old boy. And I can tell you, I know that whole group of friends was doing the exact same thing. Of course, they're going to game. That is what they do. That's why we protect children. And that's why we set parameters for them, so that they are doing what they should be doing. You don't give them that and then blame them. That is just not fair. So now this year, at the same elementary where I had problems with Nick, and I had that epiphany this summer, I just felt so strongly how much of an advocate I am for them, and that I will play my role. And I felt it so strongly. And so this year I was very proactive, and I talked to the principal right before school even started. And I said, they're not going to be on screens this year. And I was ready. Believe me, I had laws. I had my articles that showed how they don't learn as well. And I said to him, I want you to know how much gaming is going on at this school. It is not okay. And I mean, no principal is going to disagree with you that. I mean, he did not disagree. He knows that shouldn't be happening. And you know what? They have bent over backwards trying to work with me. I mean, I talked to them and I talked to the teachers. Then the principal called me back again and said, are you okay with how things are going? Are you feeling okay about everything? And I said, you know what? I feel just fine with how Sam and Alex are doing. And they both have very good teachers. They're not going to bring any screens home at night. I said they will not bring a device home. They have not brought any device home. And Sam, when the other kids are on screens just for a certain thing, Sam gets a paper book. Oh, sorry, Nicole just turned that off. And they've been wonderful, but a lot of it is just being assertive, but being kind at the same time, and then doing your homework so that you're really prepared to talk to them about what the problems are, and you are able to back up your position. And when you do that, I really think a lot of the school administrators they will try to work with the parents. A lot of them will. There's always going to be those occasional ones that are just really difficult, but a lot of them will. And a lot of the teachers, they don't want contention with the parents. They want to try to have a good relationship. So my last encouragement is, don't let things go. If you notice something that you don't feel is right, that is either inappropriate content or something that you feel isn't in the best interest of your child's education, don't let it go, because that is where we can have a lot more force. Is, we need to just send in that email. It will be kind and civil, but we need to just address it, because just even addressing it once, a lot of teachers will make a change because they don't want confrontation. And we know there's always the exceptions, but you have a lot more power than you realize. But just firm, calm, kind, and then especially if they do make changes, thank them. I mean, I tried really hard, like with Muir, they have just tried so hard to work with me. And I just thank the principal so much. I said, you know what, thank you so much. You are just such an asset to this school, and look at these wonderful teachers. And I really made them know that they are appreciated. And so when we have a positive result, we need to follow that up with gratitude, just as we would all want to be thanked when we do something to try to help someone else. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen. That was the perfect kickoff. And she's going to run home to be with her amazing family. We appreciate her coming tonight to share her thoughts with us. So we have some parents that have joined us in the class. So we created a resource page for you to follow along with the PowerPoint presentation on your phone or device, so you can see the notes and you can save it for later. So if you want to go to utahparentsunited.org/915, that's just today's date, I guess, 915. And at home, you can mark this down too. So you can also have access to this PowerPoint and all of the notes that are shared in the PowerPoint tonight. So you can follow that along on your phone tonight as we go through this. So I love so many of the things that Jen said, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into some of the topics that she introduced tonight. So our next slide is called Understand the Issues and Know the Law. And this is super important. Well, we're going to get there first. First, Nicole's pulling up a picture for you guys. And this picture is from a Scholastic magazine. And this is the first assignment that my kids got, that I had to decide what to do as a parent advocate for my children. And it was in an art class, and my daughter was not getting a good grade in the class. And I kept going in and saying, well, there's this missing assignment. If you do that, it will help your grade improve. And she's like, I'm not going to do the assignment. And I was like, why not? And we'd never really talked about this before in our house, really. And she's like, oh, Mom, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do the assignment. And so I went on her Canvas and we pulled up the assignment, and I saw this set of pictures. And I immediately knew exactly why my child was uncomfortable. The steps in the assignment was to study the pictures, choose your favorite image or artwork, describe what it meant to you, and what the artist was trying to convey. And as you can see from this picture, that this is highly politically charged. The images are from the burnt out buildings and windows that were destroyed, the public property that was destroyed by rioters after the George Floyd massacres during the summer of 2020. And there's a bleeding American flag. We have Colin Kaepernick, and actually we talked about that at length in our home. And this was the art assignment. And I looked at this and I was like, oh my word, what on earth? Where do I even start? And I didn't know the law. I didn't have the resources and the tools that I have today. And I still knew I had to go have that conversation with the principal, and I had to solve this. But I was ill prepared. And it was a rough conversation. And I don't think that she got excused from the assignment. The principal apologized for the assignment. And she said she would talk to the art teacher, but I don't know what happened after that. And now standing here years later, well, a couple of years later, after all of the experience we've had, I would do things completely differently. And that's kind of one of the reasons we prepared this class for you guys, is to share, like, what would we do different? And first off, just knowing what the laws are in Utah about the state standards for education, knowing what the laws are about a teacher not being able to teach political, controversial, divisive topics in a classroom. Those would have helped tremendously, because I would have asked to see the teacher's curriculum for the entire year. That is what I would have asked for. I didn't know I could ask for that you can see the curriculum for your teacher's class for the entire year and track every assignment and see what's going into this teacher's curriculum. If this is an assignment she's chosen, there's an agenda. She's asking these children to identify with something that they may have a right of conscience, a belief against. And our family's strong belief that it is inappropriate to use violence when expressing your First Amendment right, and that should never be celebrated. That is a very strong belief that I couldn't articulate that to the principal at the time. I didn't know how to do it. The other thing I would do different is, with the knowledge that I have now, with the laws I understand now, I would go sit and talk to that teacher, because that teacher needs to know that not everyone agrees with her political views, and that's okay. She does not have a right in a classroom as a teacher to promote or endorse one viewpoint of a topic as widely discussed as the George Floyd death. There are hundreds of thousands of different opinions and perspectives on what happened there and what happened that following summer. And every person should have the ability to express a different viewpoint on something that's so controversial and so integral to our political landscape and our beliefs as Americans. So I would have that conversation with that teacher now, and I would never have had the guts to have done it then. And that's what we hope that you guys will learn how to do. So how do you know the law? How do you find this information? We've tried to help you at Utah Parents United by collecting it and putting it in a place for you. Our resources are not perfect. We're busy. We're all moms or volunteers. But if you go to utahparentsunited.org, and the resources, the links are right here in your slides, so that should help you. We have a tab called Parents' Rights. And there's a wonderful resource there called our Parent Packet. We created it last year, and hopefully the links are all still good in it. Brooke's like nodding, yes. If the links are bad, let us know. We'll update the links, because we made it a year ago. But not only does this have information on Utah law, but it has educational information about all of these topics that are coming into our schools. The politically divisive concepts. We cover critical race theory, transformative social and emotional learning, comprehensive sex education, gender ideology, and more. And they're QR codes. So what we recommend is print it out, download the packet. It's a downloadable document. Print it out, put it by your bedside table. At night, when you need something to read, grab your phone, scan a QR code, and just go through these one by one by one. And you will get so much education on all these topics, and then you will be more ready to go and speak to your teacher or to your principal when and if and when an issue arises in your classroom. The other resource is our Know the Law tab, which is also under that Parents Resources. The Know the Law tab, we've kind of gathered some of the main topics of education law and just dropped the links in there for you. So you can look at things like free speech. We have bullying and harassment laws in Utah. We talk about like the parental constitutional rights in Utah, academic accommodations. There's all sorts of things in there. In social and emotional learning, surveys, we have FERPA laws, so that you can become more familiar with those laws. So that is what we're trying to build. If you have a question, you are not sure if something's for the law, like against the law that a teacher's doing in your classroom, a great person to reach out to is your USBE representative. This is your state USBE representative. They probably know the education code better, I think, than most people. And if they don't know the answer, they can help find that answer. And we're always here too. You can always message us or text us. And we're actually working on a little fun project to hopefully launch a parent hotline soon. So that would be awesome. but we need some more volunteers. Who wants to volunteer to help us run a parent hotline? We would love to get that up and running for you as well, because we are in it. We get inundated with so many messages, and we really want to be able to help you as parents. But that is a great place to start, to knowing the law. And just like Jen Brown said, if you need to wait a day or two or three, you go to the meeting prepared. Take a beat, take a breath, gather your resources, and then go in and have that meeting with your teacher. And we'll talk about the next section of our class on, it's called document, document, document. And this is kind of the pre-steps to the meeting. So we kind of go in order for you. And we invited Annie Macy. She is an incredible parent advocate. She did amazing work in Alaska before she moved her family here to Utah. We met her. And I have seen some of the advocacy she's done for her children through the email documentation she's created for her schools and for her school districts. And I have never seen anything like it. The methods she used to document, to share law, to share code, to help educate teachers, principals, and administrators on what they should be doing is awesome. And she is here tonight to give you some tips and tricks, and also to share with you her template that she wrote on how to craft a good starting email to get the ball rolling on that first difficult conversation and meeting you're going to have with your teacher. So Annie Macy, come on up.
You do this for me, so I will get that put on for you, and then we'll right before 8, so you're good to go.
Ready. All right, it's good to be here. I'm going to try to do this with a phone and some notes just in case I need them. So my name's Annie Massey, and it's okay, Annie Massey. So tonight I want to talk with you about how to engage in K-12 public education and why. So to introduce myself, I have 3 kids, and I moved here from Alaska a year ago, where I was the director for Alaska chapter for parents' rights and education. I've recently been actively involved, or not recently, excuse me, I've been actively involved in education for the past 12 years, where I've spent thousands of hours in and outside of public schools, volunteering my personal time. I'm passionate about education because it serves our kids and our community. And more than that, public education lays parts of the foundation for the people that our kids become. So tonight, I want to offer you my experience, my strength, and my hope. So how are we to engage in K-12 public education, and why? So in short, we do this as Jen Brown has described, as you have described, we do this in a well-informed, dignified, professional, and well-documented way. And so I've learned this, like these 2 ladies, the hard way. Like I said, I've been involved in public schools for the past 12 years. The first 6 years were about ignorance is bliss. I was PTA mom. I ran fundraisers. I did everything you would think of as the typical involved parent. I graded papers. I sorted papers. I was there to support education and to support the teachers that were educating my children. And then the following 6 years were sort of enlightenment. What's really going on inside of our public schools and why? And when you see an issue that arises, and it inevitably always will, how are you supposed to deal with that issue? There is no manual for this. And I think across our nation, we're all making up that manual together. After a very long time, it probably should have been written a long, long time ago. But we're learning this the hard way. And so why do we engage? Well, we do this for our kids. Sorry, I lost my notes there. So how do we do this? And I said, in a well-informed, dignified, professional, and well-documented way. Why do we do it? Because when we engage with school officials in that way, we restore authority to parents and we secure our rights that are given to us in 2 centuries of constitutional case law, 2 centuries worth of parents' rights laws at the Supreme Court that support parents having the fundamental liberty interest in our children's education. And we do this when we are well informed, right? And we're dignified and we're professional and we're well documented. What we do in those emails, in that communication, in that meeting, what we're doing is we are redirecting our schools back to local interests and agendas that we want in education. Not the agendas that have been placed there in our absence, because many of us have been absent for a very long time because we've been raising babies and having babies and nursing babies, and not to leave out the men, because we've all been parenting and we've assumed that our school officials and our elected officials are there doing what we expect should be good, right, and true and moral, that they're giving our children a good education, that they are serving their best interests, and that they would preserve and support and respect parents' rights and education. We expected that all those things were happening. And what we're finding is it's not necessarily what was happening. And what we see with our own eyes and hear with our own ears and hear from our own children being reported back to us are reports of agendas being inserted into public education that are not my agenda. And they're not a lot of your agendas. And the agenda, we won't talk about it, but I see 3 parts that I keep repeating. And I'm learning and I'm seeing, and they are a social, sexual, and political agenda, in short. And in my opinion, and many others, those agendas have no business inside public education. No business. So, lost my train of thought there. Okay, so I want to start with a short story to help illustrate for you the importance of your role as mama and dada, and that does not stop at the school threshold. So, Mother's Day, you can picture this right out of lockdowns in our state. We were freed from our homes and people went out on Mother's Day for brunch. And we went out for brunch and I was with my family and 3 children. And I looked at this other family walking in and having brunch. And this young mother brought in her 4 children, 4 years and under is by my estimation. And I sat and I watched them and I was so drawn to them. And I think it was because I really remember what that felt like, because I had 3 kids and they were at some point 4 and under. And I watched this young mama and all my kids were eating all on their own and drinking and not dropping things. And so I was watching her, and maybe it was just the nostalgia of being out of my house and seeing other people in a restaurant. And there was this young mama and she was caring for her kids and she was nurturing them. And I could not take my eyes off of what she was doing. And I got emotional sitting there in the middle of this restaurant, watching this mama do her job and take care of her responsibilities. And what that looked like, and I documented it here. She cares and nurtures them one by one, providing for their individual needs and their best interests with her expertise and knowledge about exactly what each child could handle. She knows this intuitively. There is no struggle in her understanding of what they need. She sees what's happening at that table. She knows if there's a concern that arises, she can quickly resolve it because she's right there and she sees the bigger picture and she knows each individual intimately better than anyone alive. She knows and she understands her moral and spiritual authority and responsibility and duty and obligation to protect, train, and raise and educate her 3 kids. This is what I was seeing in the restaurant. She sat there with a 4-year-old and 2-year-old and one in the lap, and you all know what this is like. And she cut up the steak and she spooned this over here and she gave this child exactly what they needed and what they liked or what they didn't like or what they were allergic to or not allergic to. Mom knows that best. Dad knows that as well. But she took care of those kids and she was given the freedom and the authority, and nobody was bucking her. There was no system in that restaurant saying, what are you doing? Why are you feeding that kid that? And why don't you use this tool instead of that tool? Because that mom knows best how that kid can eat and what portion control that they can handle, at what age they can handle it. She's watching their faces to see if they're choking, if they're having an allergic reaction. My sister knows the sights, sounds, and smells because of her child who has sensory processing disorder. When she enters an area, she knows exactly this is going to be really hard for my child, or that's not going to be hard for my child. They know what's going on inside there, and they are free to direct them because they have been given the God-given authority to direct them. And nobody stops that mom and that dad from doing that. So why is it any different in public education? Should it be different in public education? I don't think so at all. And so as I watched her do that, I instantly thought that, instantly. Sitting there, I was like, why? This is like this epiphany that's hitting me in this restaurant. Why is it okay that she can do this and manage this? No problem here. But as soon as she enrolls that 4-year-old in kindergarten in a year or two, she's going to experience some issues. And when those issues arise, she should be given the respect of every single school official, because the law protects her and gives her and secures for her authority to direct that child's education. And it should not be infringed upon in any way. Utah code, and this is probably something that might need to be changed on your links. There is a parents' rights code that has been remunerated, and it's 80-2A-201. Let me just go to it here. When I read the full code, this code, let me just make sure, did I say that correctly? It is Utah Code 80-2A-201. It has recently been remunerated. I have found in different states, these lovely parental rights codes get shuffled around. So find them, they change, but they should say the same thing, different numbers.
What's the new one for that?
This is the new one. This is the new one. As I read this when I arrived here in Utah, and some of my friends here at Utah Parents United know, when I arrived in Utah, I fell in love with Utah Code, fell in love with it because the law is on our side, and it really is on our side, not just in Utah. I mean, nationwide, we have parents' rights laws, and every individual needs to find them, and they need to know what they say because they are there for you. Utah Code, this one, is so beautiful. When I've read it, it brings me to tears. I'll just read this one part. It says the state recognizes that a parent has the right, obligation responsibility and authority to raise, manage, educate, provide, and care for and reasonably discipline the parent's child. And the state's role is secondary and supportive to the primary role of a parent. It is the public policy, this is my favorite part. It is the public policy of this state that a parent retains the fundamental right and duty to exercise primary control over the care, supervision, upbringing, and education of the parent's child. So when I go and I enroll my children in public education, when they cross that threshold, this law doesn't change. So when your kid has an issue with mathematics or reading or social emotional learning lesson or a comprehensive sexual education lesson or a book in the library that is freely there for their access, when your child has an issue with signage inside of our public buildings, we have the right to direct their education. We do. I notice that it doesn't say reasonably. This is the state's role is secondary and supportive to the primary role of a parent. The primary role of a parent. It doesn't say the primary role of the NEA. It doesn't say the primary role of the UEA. It doesn't say the primary role of the PTA. It doesn't say the primary role of the NSBA or any of the garden variety of associations and councils that have had the agenda and have inserted their interests in our absence. It doesn't say that. It is always the community and parents that direct education. So what did you hear in that code when I read it? Because I heard education. I heard education. So the same freedom that a parent deserves in a local restaurant, post office, DMV, it is the same as when they enroll their child in public education. So what do we do when there is a problem in public education? What are we to do? So we can go to that one slide there, the document. So I've learned this the hard way. I picked up some of these points in various things that I've listened to along the way. Eventually, my advocacy in public education got a little bit hard. And I realized that I was not getting through. And it's not as if this email or any email or conversation or meeting is guaranteed to get through. This was something that I learned along the way to be able to document so that if things go wrong, it is well documented what you think, that you were well informed, that you brought the information that backed up what you were saying, and you had a concern. So what does it say? It says, "Dear educator, here's what's happening and are being reported to me by my child, and provide the evidence." That is, how do we do this? We do this in a well-informed way. We go to Utah Parents United. We pull down what they have collected for us all in the realm of parents, parental rights laws. We research the Summit Learning Platform. We research Canvas. We research other laws. We research privacy laws. We understand what's going on. We show up well-informed. So, dear educator, here's what's happening. And here's my evidence. Because my concern is this is going to destabilize my kid if they're shown this. Because in our house, this is what's taught. Or this is harming their well-being, or they don't feel safe. Or this math is confusing, or this reading is confusing, or this is developmentally inappropriate. Whatever your concern may be, say it. And then you say, because the law that you have researched and you have documented, the policy that you have researched, that you have documented, the student handbook, the district policy, you provide it for them. It's kind of like, this part of the email is kind of like calling in backup. If you were a police officer, you're saying, and by the way, I got some backup, because you're going to need that, because it's helpful. It's very, very helpful. And then the last part is, can you help me understand more? And this is something that I picked up in this, how to raise a concern with an educator is, I think, is something I Googled a long time ago. How to raise a concern with a teacher, or because I wasn't being heard. I was doing my best, but I was not being heard. And so this was the suggestion. Can you help me understand more? And you're putting it back in your corner, in your seat. Maybe I'm misunderstanding. Help me understand this more. And it shows you're willing and able to hear what they have to say. Help me understand. The other part is, help me to understand the process, the practice, and the procedure, because they exist. They exist, or they should exist. And if there is a process, a policy or procedure that you didn't find and you need to be following, you're going to want to know that. You're going to be wanting to follow their procedure if there is one. And you're basically asking them, show me where that is so that I may follow it. And then ask, how can we resolve this together? It doesn't say, how are you going to resolve this? How are you going to fix this? It says, how are we going to resolve this together? It's a partnership. I believe in that partnership. I believe it's actually the only way that our proficiency rates will go up, is with that partnership of parents and teacher and kid. It's called the education triangle. In one corner, you have student. Actually, at the top, you got the student. And then in each corner, you have the parent and the teacher. That is how education works. Student, parent, teacher. And the reason why parent is in that corner, if schools and administrators don't understand this, is because children lack legal capacity. They're minors. They're not legally there to represent themselves. They can't do that in the law. They can't sign consent. They can't do that. That is given to a parent. So the parent has to be in this triangle in the education system. Otherwise, it doesn't work. School can't go straight to a student. So the last two points are real quick here, and I'll just sum it up. I told you that I would share my experience, strength, and hope. The strength that I have to share with you is that the law is on our side, and that parents' rights is on our side, and that the Constitution of the United States is on our side, and that 2 centuries of SCOTUS rulings are on our side, and that good teachers who have longed for parents to be involved in their kids' education, who have longed for us to be there and to be engaged with them, those good teachers are on our side. We are not alone in what we have to do before us. Thomas Jefferson said, "We in America do not have government by the majority, but by the majority who participate." Participation. So parents, we have to be engaged. And I started this Facebook post, and it said, civil engagement is 100% more effective than complaining online. And it is. And it is. So. And that's it. Thanks, guys.
Grab your mic.
Oh, thank you.
All right, so our goal is to finish up soon. We try and make these about an hour and a half, 8:30 sometimes. But we were asked if we were going to do a Q&A, so we're going to try and move quickly so we can do a little bit of a Q&A. But if you want to hang on past 8:30 and have us answer questions, we can be here till 9. So we'll just, whatever you parents need, we're here for you. We're at your beck and call, I guess, to be a resource for you. And I really appreciate the words you said tonight. So many moments of that. I like, yes, I relate to that. I understand that. I felt that. And it's that strength and that hope that we have, and the hope of those good people and those good teachers and those good administrators that are with us. And I've worked with so many of them over the past couple of years. And I know like there's kind of this like bad rap we've kind of gotten as Utah Parents United, as this kind of like group that doesn't appreciate teachers. And I always think that's the strangest thing. Where does that come from? Because my kids are in public education. I need my teachers. I love my teachers. I'm so grateful for my teachers. I send my children to teachers at school to teach them. And so I echo your sentiments about being so grateful for good teachers and administrators. And we actually do a teacher award, Parent Choice Teacher Award, every month. So when you find that teacher or that administrator that is helping you, do what Jen Brown said. Let's thank them. Let's recognize them. Let's work with them. And you can submit them a nomination for them to be a Teacher of the Month from us as parents, to thank them for all that they're doing. So our next slide goes to the meeting. All right. So we've gotten the email out. We've set the meeting. We're documenting. We have all our resources. And then we get to go to the meeting. And man, these things are hard. They're rough. Oh, that you always walk out of them and go, oh my gosh, I went awful. I did a horrible job. Anyway, that's me. I always feel like I didn't do great. But some of the main tips, just, don't go alone to the meeting. Take someone with you. Your spouse is great. A friend is wonderful. If you have to go to the meeting alone, record the meeting. The Utah law allows for one party recording. So as long as you know you're recording, that's all that matters. And so you can record the meeting, and it's not because you're trying to catch them saying something, or we need to find out what, no, this is so that you can go back and you can remember clearly what they said, and you have an accurate documentation of the meeting. And so that is why it's important to record it. If you can't do that, of course, be kind and patient. We've had so many great tips on that tonight. So the other piece of this little is consider using an opt-out form. Okay, these opt-out forms are all over. This is a big thing in Utah right now. One of our another great advocacy group has created a website to help you with opt-out forms. So I'm just going to share my own little personal experience of what opt-out forms. You can find ours in the parent packet. There's a link to it. The one that we created for Utah Parents United. The intent of our opt-out form, be very honest, is as a conversation starter. And school districts caught on really fast. I think we were one of the first groups to send out opt-out forms. And now certain districts, you go and turn in your opt-out form and they say, oh, no, you have to use our form. So the opt-out form is not the end of the conversation. It is not going to solve your problem. It is not going to opt your child out of the material. And just sending in an opt-out form could actually be more harmful. The point of an opt-out form is to use it to guide your conversation with your teacher or with your principal or with your administrator, and for documentation. So if you aren't willing to go into the school with the form and sit down and have a conversation about it, it's not going to help you very much. You need to be willing to back it up and to use it as a conversation, use it as a method of getting information, and then absolutely have them put it in your file and discuss it. There's some amazing results. Parents have gotten amazing results from taking in an opt-out form because the law is right there. All of the wording is there. The language is there. You sign it. You know, it just really gets to the heart of what you're trying to achieve. Now, there are some opt-out forms that you do just opt out and they work, and that would be opting out of testing. And that is a state form that already exists and you opted out. An opt-out form for like panorama testing, SHARP survey, all of those types of opt-out forms, that really is you just sign it, you're just opting it out. But if you're trying to opt out of controversial topics or curriculum or something, an assignment that happened in a classroom, those types of issues, that is where the conversation is really going to be the thing that's going to help see a change in your school. And ultimately, that's what we're hoping for, is to change the education system by reasserting those parental rights, just like Annie talked about. So we're asking you to do it the harder way, the more difficult way, but where we hope to see longer lasting results as we work to create those relationships that Annie discussed. So that's my little thing on the opt-out form. And then of course, sometimes you don't get heard. The issue isn't resolved. And so what we just say is you just keep going in this process and make sure you follow up with another email. And in the email, each time you send an email, re-summarize what just happened. So no matter what the result is, it's a horrible meeting, I didn't go well, send a thank you so much for your time. I appreciate these points that we discussed. I understand this is what this is what you said I could do, and thank you very much. Now we move on to the next little piece of this, unless Nicole, you have any thoughts to add to that, or anyone else has any thoughts to add. Okay, so our next slide is follow the chain. So what do we do next? So we follow the chain, and there is a reason we encourage parents to follow this chain, is because inevitably you're going to get to a spot where you get stuck. We've all been stuck in the chain, right? And if you skip steps, you are dismissed just like that. Because they'll say, well, you didn't talk to your teacher. Now you have to go all the way back and talk to your teacher. Oh, well, you didn't talk to your principal. Oh, no, your principal's the one who can handle this. And so you find yourself, if you skip steps in the education, we call it I put quotes on it, it's the education chain of command, right? Nicole can speak to this a little bit. The education chain of command, you're going to find yourself going backwards and redoing things. So we highly recommend following the education chain of command. The picture I have on here is actually from the USBE. And so they are saying this is the best way to advocate. Well, they run the education system, so it might be wise to try and work within the system that they've created to get results. And it doesn't always work, but we found it is the best. It is the best way to do it. And Nicole's going to talk about following the chain, finding the people to talk to, and a little bit about reporting, who you report to and stuff.
Okay, so it has been statistically proven that children are more successful the more involved their parents are. So if you're a parent, if you read to your children at night, if you look at their backpack at night, if you ask them what they learned during the day, your child is just going to be more successful the more involved you are. And there are longitudinal studies. I'm not saying it right, but you know, there are studies across years that document this. And so the bottom line is we want parents to be involved. We want, as parents, as Utah Parents United, the board, we want to be involved in our kids' education because we know the more involved we are, the more successful they're going to be. And there is no parenting manual for parents on how to navigate through the public education system. There's no training manual, there's no script on how to handle the glitches that might come up. And so that's kind of why Utah Parents United was created, was we wanted to be a parent support group for parents to help understand the best practices of what works, because we know we're going to create a better society if we can get more parents to get involved. That's really what we want, is we want all parents to be involved, to parent their kids, and we want parents to be really good parents, because that's going to improve everything. So we'll set that aside and start with a really easy example. As a board, we have dealt with everything So we're doing this class because we've experienced this. And we're not asking you to do anything that we haven't already done ourselves and that we haven't had to do ourselves. So we're not asking you to go practice. We've had to practice this, and this is what we've learned. And now we're trying to pass this along as good practices for everyone else. So the easy one to start with is the Pledge of Allegiance. I found that it's Utah State Code that children shall say the Pledge of Allegiance every day, not once a week, every day. And that was something I only learned recently. So I had never really asked my kids, do you guys say the Pledge of Allegiance? So I asked them about 2 weeks into school. I said, hey, do you guys say the Pledge of Allegiance? I had one kid who said, what's that? And I, recited it. No, I've never said that before. I'm like, oh my gosh, how have I neglected my duty as a parent? And I had another kid who was like, oh yeah, I think I've heard that before. And I was like, well, do you guys say that every day? And there was a chorus, no. And so I thought, okay, well, this is something I should probably say something about. It's the law. We need to teach our kids how to be good citizens. So our kids should be saying the Pledge of Allegiance. So I texted the board on a group chat, and because we have a teacher, we have other, we just have a really great board who's experienced the whole gamut. And I was like, you guys, how do I do this? How do I bring up the fact that my kid's school is not doing the Pledge of Allegiance? And I got the best answers. Someone texted and just said, just say, hey, I've noticed, or I've asked my kids about saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and they said they haven't been saying it, and then it was, is there a plan for starting to say the Pledge of Allegiance? And I thought, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. So my email to the principal was, hey, I love this school. I love everything that you guys are doing. I'm so grateful that my kids come to this school. But my kids came home and said they haven't been saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I said, I know it's just the first week of school, so forgive me if I'm jumping the gun. But is there a plan in place, that they will be saying it moving forward? And the principal emailed back and she's like, oh yeah, you're right. I need to remind the student council that they need to start saying that. So that one was pretty easy, pretty non-threatening. There wasn't a real controversial topic because it's in the law, but I thought that was a really great approach of just trying to say, hey, I've asked my kids about this. This is what they said. And then asking a question, is there a plan moving forward? Or is this something that I can help facilitate? And I said that, I was like, hey, if your student council is going to be doing this, do you need posters? Do you need any tools? Is there anything that I can help with in helping to get them to say the Pledge of Allegiance? And, this principal didn't take me up on the offer or anything, but I thought that was a really great approach. A non-threatening, wasn't emotionally charged at all. And so that was a really easy one. That if you want to try it, that's a way that you could do it, is ask your child's principal, like, hey, my kids have told me that they're not saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there a plan moving forward to do that? Or is there something that I can do to help facilitate that? So that was one of my experiences this year. Now the harder one that I have never experienced before was I had a teacher who emailed me something from the district email that I felt was inappropriate. It was something that she was sending out in general, about her personal beliefs. And it was just something that I felt like violated a professional relationship between myself and the teacher, or what a teacher ought to be emailing out to parents. And so I said swear words in my mind about like what was happening and like how it was going to happen. So I was like, I have never been in this situation before. Like, holy cow, what do I do? I am uncomfortable. Now, a really passive aggressive person might request a teacher change, right? And say, oh, this isn't going to be the right fit. Let's just move classrooms. It's early in the year. We can do this. But I found myself in a situation where it would not be possible for my child to have a teacher change because of a program that he was in. So it was off the table. I had to deal with this situation. I had to either choose to be silent for the entire year and have a panic attack every time this teacher would email me, wondering what she was going to send me next, or I had to find a way to navigate the situation. So that's what I did. And I decided I was not going to suffer in silence because that's not my personality. And I could not risk having a panic attack every time this teacher was going to send me her personal beliefs in an email. It was like, I couldn't take it. So I am so grateful for the relationships that we've been able to build with Utah Parents United, because I had the opportunity to immediately call my state school board member who over the last 2 years, I've been emailing her back and forth, asking her questions or giving her feedback, and how grateful I am that I have been able to preserve that relationship, and that that was an easy text. Or I actually called her and she answered right away, and I explained the situation and she gave me some great coaching. And kind of what Jen Brown said about the contention, my state school board member said, you know what, as you talk to this teacher, tell her how you're feeling. And if she pushes back on you at all, just thank her kindly for her time and end the meeting. So she gave me some great tips for how to approach this situation. And I had the opportunity to call the state superintendent. How grateful I am that we have had the chance to build these relationships with state school board members, with the state superintendent, so that I could call her and that she answered the phone and that I explained the situation and she could personally coach me on what to do. And I, said, hey, you're training not only me to go in and navigate this, but now you're training me to train other parents. So this is how we're going to look at it. And she fully agreed. She's like, I love this. I love that this is a training opportunity that you can take and put out there. And so that's how we did it. And we sat down and I took notes of exactly what the state superintendent suggested of how we approach this. So I wanted to be able to share that of like exactly what she thinks is the best way as parents that we should be navigating these situations with our teacher. Because this was scary for me, like to think about going in and having this conversation with the teacher. Like it might be easy for some people, but I was terrified. So some of the things that we talked about is she said, face-to-face is best. She said, do not just send an email. There's not emotion you can't sense emotion in an email. She said, face-to-face is best. She said, set up an appointment. Do not go in there and surprise that teacher. You're going to put that teacher on edge. So just kindly send an email to set an appointment at a good time so that they know that you're coming in. Recognize that your teacher loves your child. They are teaching because they want to teach. They love kids. They want to disseminate good knowledge. So try to recognize that they are coming from a place of good intentions. Like I know this teacher didn't have intentions to make me say swear words. She, probably like thought she was doing a great thing. So that was what I was supposed to do, is channel this idea that she was coming from a place of great intentions. And say things like, this is the impact that it's having on me and my family. Like share with her what her actions were doing. She also counseled me on being careful with the choice of words that we use. So we talked about the word indoctrinate, like, this feels like she's trying to indoctrinate me. And she's like, okay, no, we're not going to use that word. That's kind of a heated word. She said, use the word that she was using this as a tool to try to influence your beliefs. So I'm like, okay, writing this down as a script as she's talking, like, okay, so be really careful not to use the buzzwords, right? Try to make it non-threatening words. And oh, okay, this is really good too. So basically, what she did was she gave me a really beautiful script to use for when I went in to talk with this teacher. And she put me in a really great frame of mind for how to approach that teacher and understand that I really wanted to preserve that relationship. Because if I would go in there and tell that teacher, the swear words that were going through my mind, that would probably impact the relationship, and that might, cause division, and that would make it harder for me to go in and volunteer and things like that. So I emailed this teacher and I said, is it okay if I come in and talk to you for a few minutes? Okay, we arranged a time or whatever. I went in, I sat down, I talked to her, and I really said, I want to be such a great parent for you. I want you to feel supported. I want you to feel like you can call on me, like if you need something for your classroom. I want you to feel like I've got your back, and that I'm going to do whatever I can to make this a great year, because I want my kid to have a great experience, and I want to have a great relationship with you as a teacher. And she's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's great. And then I went to my script that I was given by, my state school board rep and the state superintendent and everything. And I said, I noticed when you sent this email to me, it had this and this and this in there. And I can understand that you probably did that because you were trying to, be inclusive, and, you wanted everyone to feel welcome. And I understand that that is what probably your intention was. But when I received that, I really felt like you were using your email, your district email, as a tool to try to influence my beliefs, because you did this and this. And when I clicked on this link you provided, it said this, and that made me really uncomfortable, because that is, not something that my family agrees with. Like, we don't get behind that philosophy of what you were like choosing to share and try to get me to embrace. And she was like, oh my goodness, I thank you so much for telling me. She's like, can I give you a hug? And she got up and she came around and she gave me a hug, and she's like, I cannot believe, thank you so much that you would come and share that with me. She's like, I've been doing this for a year and a half. How many other parents have been feeling like this? And she said, I did that because I went through a teacher training a year and a half ago from a certain department, and they recommended that we do that in our emails. And I was like, oh. And I said more swear words in my mind. They didn't come out, but oh, wow. Like, seriously, this poor woman was advised to do this by a department training from the school district. And she honestly said, I had no idea. I was told that this would be a good idea. How many other parents over the last few years have felt like this? And I was like, just that's all that needed to be said, right? And I said, you know what? I just want to have a good relationship with you. I just want to be able to get an email from you without having a panic attack of like what it's going to be in there. And she just said, thank you. Thank you for coming to me. Thank you for telling me. I so appreciate that. And we parted ways, and it's been great. And I feel like I can have a great relationship moving forward. I don't feel any qualms about going into that classroom, about volunteering. I did say, okay, one piece that I missed that I think it's important to add to the script when you sent that to me, it made me worry about spillover, that those ideologies might be coming into the classroom. I said, because I understand these ideologies are against the law, and that is non-sectarian, and that they are not to be discussed in a school setting, especially not in an elementary school. And so that's where my documentation came in. It was that I cited the law and what is not allowed to be spoken about. And I said, you sending this to me as a parent, like, I understand that you were sending it to me as a parent, but with that, I am worried about that ideology spilling over then into the classroom, because I wonder what you might be trying to teach my child in the classroom. And she said, oh my gosh, no, I have no agenda there. That belongs between a parent and a child. And I said, well, okay, but when you sent this email to me, it brought me great anxiety, because it felt like that's your agenda, that if you're sending that to me as a parent, what on earth are you teaching my kid in the classroom? So that was a part of the dialogue that I left out, that I feel is essential, that you can use when talking to your parents. Like, if you're in a similar situation, I'm just trying to let you understand the script that I used, because I felt like it was so great. And it was because it wasn't my words. It's not something I came up with. I had to, take notes from different people coaching me through the situation, right? But the long story short is the situation went great. It could not have gone better. And so I hope that those tips help you. Now, there were some other things that happened at the same school. So, so this was a school that wasn't saying the Pledge of Allegiance. The teacher sending me funny emails. There were signs up that the district, so that violate district policy. And I took a picture of those at back to school night. And so I was like, okay, there's a pattern here that's not good. So I knew that I needed to talk to the principal, right? So we start with the teacher, and then the next step is that we go to the principal when we have concerns. And so I had the chance to do the same thing. I made an appointment with the principal, went and thanked her. And then I said, okay, I love this school. I love all the fun stuff that you did. I don't ever want you to think that I'm an ungrateful parent, because I'm so grateful that my kids have the opportunity to go here and participate in these things. However, I'm seeing a pattern of activity in your school that's making me really uncomfortable. Haven't been saying the Pledge of Allegiance. You've got these divisive flags up, and then this teacher sending me shady information. I said, now I've resolved that with the teacher. What I'm trying to illustrate to you is that there's a pattern of activity in your school that's making me uncomfortable. Like, this is the law. This is the district policy on flags that you can display. She's like, oh, where are those displayed? And I said, okay, I took a picture. Here you go. Here's a picture. Oh, well, are those really, those symbols? I'm like, that's this flag and that's this flag. And she's like, oh, is it really? Yes, it is. And she said, okay, well, I'll look into that. So that was kind of set aside for a second. So I want to talk about the chain of command, that you go to the teacher first and then to the principal. Now, I also had the opportunity to go to my local school board rep. So, and over the last 2 years, I've had the chance to establish a good relationship with her too. So, I text her and she, answers. And so I called her also and explained that we were having this parent class, and that, here are the issues that I'm facing. And it's not only me on an individual level, but I'm trying to train other parents on the chain of command and how we do this. And so she explained that when we should go to our school board members is when there is a policy in general that's not being followed, like across the board. So it's not just an isolated incident. So let me say it like this. If there is an issue at your school that does not just impact your child, if there's something that affects like a broad spectrum of children, not just your child in that school, then that's when you would take it to your school board rep. So so she said, if there's generally a policy that's not being followed, then that would be a time to inform your school board rep about what's going on. And it'll come back to me, because I am missing a piece of that. I'm trying to see. These are all my notes from all the different, well, darn it. Okay, so I'm gonna put that one on pause for a second, because after you have the principal, you have a district official, like you have someone who oversees the elementary schools, and you have another administrator who oversees the junior highs, and another person who oversees the high schools. And then beyond that, above that, you have the superintendent. And so in my case, if I were experiencing a problem with my child's school and it was not being resolved by the principal, like they continued to not say the Pledge of Allegiance, they continue to display symbols that they have been asked not to display, they continue to have pervasive problems in one area, then that's when we escalate it to the next level of the person who oversees the elementary school or the junior high or the superintendent. And at that point, we can explain our problem, like, hey, I started with the teacher. I then talk to the principal. So we take that documentation of what we did, and we say this is what has happened. However, the problem has not been resolved. And then we ask for some intervention or some help there. And we can copy then the superintendent on that as well. And that's at a point where we could also loop in our school board member. So our school board member is a partner in that as well. And I was actually advised once I reported back about the interaction that I had with my teacher, I called my state school board member because funny story, she knew about the email before I even told her about it because someone else had sent it to her. So I wasn't the only problem, or I wasn't the only person. She's like, oh yeah, I saw that email too. And I was like, you did? And she said, yeah. And so as I reported back to her and I said, the teacher said she was advised to do it by the equity department. She said, you need to contact, or you need to email the equity department and CC the superintendent about it. And I also called the state superintendent and said, the equity department said that. And she said, okay, I'm stepping in at this point. So she said she was going to contact the equity department too. But I hope that kind of illustrates what the pattern of where we go. Do you guys have any questions on that? Or does that make sense on what I did? But I really wanted you guys to hear the interaction of speaking with the teacher, because I think that's where most problems can be resolved, is with the teacher first and then with the principal. And that when you cover that place of like good intentions and assuming the best and trying to build a friendship, it really does preserve that relationship. And I think for me, it's turned out lovely. I know it doesn't work like that for all parents. Oh, one more story, sorry. Okay, I have to add one more thing. This is important, and I probably should have started with this. So there was a parent who emailed me his son's, a photo from his son's high school classroom. And he said, Nicole, my kid walked into his high school classroom and he took this picture and he sent it to me and said, Dad, what do I do? So I actually took that picture to the state superintendent as well and said, how do you want us to handle this one? Right, because she's training us, because there's no parent manual. And I'm looking at this and all I have are swear words. So she's giving me the direction. And she said, okay, if that was sent to him by his son, really the best possible thing that could happen is if that child, that son, that student would go to his teacher and say, that sign's making me uncomfortable. And she said, if that can be done, if that child feels comfortable doing that, then she said that will have the most impact on that teacher, because then the teacher can understand the actual effect it's having on the kids in that classroom. So she said that would be ideal if you have a student who's brave enough to do that, to say, that makes me uncomfortable. I feel like that's divisive. That kind of spurred us into a different conversation where she said that she felt like teachers really needed to understand that the symbols that they display in their classroom, while they're meant to be inclusive and try to make everyone feel welcome, that sometimes those same symbols can disenfranchise another group of people at the same time. And I think that's what we're experiencing, and maybe teachers aren't seeing, that they're really have great intentions by just the things that they want to display and promote, but at the same time, by them promoting their personal beliefs or ideologies, they're disenfranchising, they're dividing people who don't feel that same way. And she said that's why the best thing that we can do is express the impact that those symbols, their signs, their flags, whatever they're displaying, have on us and how we feel about them. So she said if the student's willing to do that, that would be ideal, because then that really can tell the teacher about the culture they're creating in that classroom. If the student is not willing to do that, which I'm betting most students aren't, right? That we then as the parent go in and talk to them and explain that for them on their behalf. This is how your symbol is making my child feel. This is how you're dividing our family. You're making our family not feel welcome. This is not a safe space for my family. Although you're trying to create a safe space for one group of people or promote one set of beliefs or ideologies, now my family is not safe in this environment because you're promoting your beliefs above, what we believe. And that's not really fair to us. My child deserves to come to school in a non-sectarian environment and feel comfortable and not have feel like one set of beliefs is promoted above another. So that was one thing that the state superintendent inserted in. Now this parent, bless him, he went in, he said that to the teacher. They brought in the principal, and he said the principal did all the talking at that point. And the teacher did not do anything as a result of the conversation, and instead put up another divisive symbol. So he's still in the middle of negotiating through this, and this is a work in progress, right? We're all learning together about best practices, but there will be times where it doesn't work, where you have that conversation with the teacher and you're not any more comfortable in that classroom. And so that's where you can go and copy the superintendent and the principal and say, you know what, this is not a safe space for my child. This is, and that's where you can start to bring in a little bit more, you know, this is against Utah law. This is how it's making me feel. And at that point, we've actually been advised to copy our House reps and our senators. So know your House rep, know your USBE rep, know your senator, your state senator, because as you escalate, you're going to have to let them know this is what's happening in schools. The school is not following the law. This is not a safe space. Utah, we have great laws, amazing laws. They're meant to protect us, but there are times when they are not followed. And our legislators need to know when those laws are not being followed. And so there gets to be a time as we're going up the chain, you know, some things we can resolve ourselves, but then we start to do it a little more strong. All right, we're going to copy the superintendent on this one. All right, still not getting a resolution. State rep, House rep, state senator, USBE rep, and we document, so we can show a pattern of what the law not being observed. So that's what I've learned. I hope that this is helpful. I'm still learning. I am not perfect. I'm still going to be calling people asking for scripts and how do you want me to handle this one? And we'll try to document that and then pass it along to you guys as best as possible. But hopefully we can write that parent resource manual and give you guys scripts and tools so that you feel comfortable building these relationships with your teachers and administrators. Yeah. Oh, okay.
We can shift right into a Q&A.
Oh, yeah,
Nicole
sure.
Seamlessly ended us on our last slide, which is reporting. And you spoke about that beautifully. And if you'll see on your slide, it shows you exactly the places you can report to, how to report, and make sure to share it with us as well. We like to take all of this data that we collect, and with your permission, because you're sending it to us. And if you don't want it, personal information, don't send it to us. Don't send that information to us. Just say, because we're going to share it if you send it to us. But we love to share it with our legislators and our superintendents and all of these people we've built relationships with. We take them binders of pornography and parent complaints. It's fantastic. And we do have an impact in legislation. And so report all those wonderful places. And now we can open it up.
Yeah, we never share on social media.
Oh, no.
We
Never social
never,
media.
our policy is we never share about people or about individual classrooms. We never attack people. We never attack teachers. We just share policy violations and we share best practices. Like, okay, parents, this happened, and we try to be general. How do we deal with it? So we're not ever going to attack or share any personal information anywhere.
And we have in the past shared, and then we find out we don't know the whole story. And so if you're wondering why you go to Utah Parents United and it's not like a catalog of parent complaints, well, just like Annie said, that is not the most effective way. Complaining on social media does not solve the problem. So we love to share what's going on in general to give parents ideas and tips and tricks, but
To come to a resolution.
but email us information and we'll help any way we can that way. But don't, we really try hard to be respectful of information and teachers and superintendents who are doing that. Now, if the news media breaks it,
That's not on us. That's not on us. We don't do that.
all right.
Yep.
So now we can answer questions, Q&A.
Yeah.
All night long, whatever. Oh, I guess for the next 15 minutes.
I have one from
Okay.
Okay.
my child is in a special program through the district. She's in 6th grade, but not in a regular GE class. We feel she has more potential for growth than her current teacher is giving her. Teacher says he is doing best for the classes, sixth graders with the staff they have. I have gone to the principal. Principal says they don't have the staff to put my child in another class. Since this is a special education program, but a regular elementary school, they can't do anything because no one has applied for position. So they can't do much for my child. What can I do?
Well, that's a great question. If they are literally saying we do not have the staff to help your child, then I think as a parent, you got to make a decision. What are you going to do for your child? If the school is saying, I can't help your child, they're telling you they cannot help your child. So you need to make a decision. Are you going to keep that child where they're at? Or are you going to homeschool, find a private school, find a co-op? You know, I think sometimes it's a tough decision, but I think the school has made their position clear. We cannot help your child. We're doing the best that we can. So now as a parent, you take that and say, okay, am I going to accept that? Or am I going to do something different? So that's where we as parents sometimes have to say, I can't abdicate this problem to them. They're telling me they can't fix it. So now I have to fix it. And I actually was in this position. I have one child who just was so, this is when I lived in Texas. So, but Texas said, my child was so smart. They said, you know, there's nothing we can do for your child. If I were you, I'd just homeschool your kid. And I was like, okay. So we homeschooled our kid.
Yeah.
So does
I-
that help?
Yeah, I think that I had a similar situation where I couldn't get material choice for my child, despite the law saying I should be able to get material choice for my child, despite the fact that the Constitution says I direct their education. But the school was unable and unwilling to provide the material choice that my child needed. And I was at that same crossroads. I could continue to get upset at the school and wish things were different and demand and demand and demand. But while I continue to demand and they can continue to say, sorry, we're not going to do that, my child was suffering. So I faced that same critical junction point, and I found a solution that worked for my child. We do dual enrollment. So I took a part of my child's education upon myself, and she took responsibility for that part of her education as well. And she does her 4 core classes at home through an online program. And then she does her extracurricular classes through the school. And the material choice that she gets, the platform she learns on at home that we took responsibility for, has been amazing for her. And it has worked very well. And she's once again thriving in school. But I had to come and face that reality that in that situation I was in, that I had reached an impasse. And it was getting to that point where Jen and others talk about the contention was there, the defensiveness was there. There was nothing a legislator could do at this point. I hope at some point legislation can be created that will require schools to follow the law, that they do offer material choice as the law says they should. But at this point, it's not there. So I had to make sure my child got what they needed in education. It is my ultimate responsibility to do that as a parent. So we've faced this as parents, and it is difficult and it is hard. And I know a lot of parents out tutoring and other things like that. Going into the classroom, I've heard of parents who physically go into a classroom for a specific subject to sit with their child during that subject to either enhance their learning by providing higher materials during that time period, or to provide guided one-on-one tutoring to that child during that period of school. And I know not every parent can do that, but this is where we do have to take that responsibility on sometimes. So,
Oh, and I have one more thing to say
one
about
more
this.
thing.
This
Now,
is,
if anyone
it
else
suddenly came to
has
me.
any other
It
thoughts
was,
on this topic?
it was, okay, send it to your House rep and your senator.
Yes.
The person online who asked, what do I do? You document that and you say, I was told my school could not provide the education for my child because they didn't have the staff. They couldn't do this, they couldn't do that. So you send it to your USBE rep, your House rep, and your senator. Like, yes, you need to take that on personally as like, okay, what are you going to do as a parent? But you need to tell your elected officials. These elected officials have been assigned to take care of education of our children, right? We elected them to represent us, to make laws, to implement the education system. So if it does not work, we need to let our elected officials know about it. So document it, document it, document it.
Yeah. Hey, another question
One
or
follow-up,
comment.
sorry.
Yeah.
What program are you referring to, that you use for your child?
Oh, so Utah law was passed, because we have great laws, recently that allows you to dual enroll a child's 7th through 12th grade in a school. And you go to the Utah Online School website and it gives you the options. And so you can pick from approved curriculum platforms. And then the one I use is Mountain Heights Academy. Mountain Heights Academy is the one that we do. And so you actually enroll them. You enroll them on this website in the course, and it's a charter school. It's like an online charter school. And then you put down the counselor of your school, and then it sends a notification to the counselor that you are enrolling your child in those courses through the Utah Online School portal. And then at the end of the term, the credits your child earns on that portal transferred back to your child's school. So you don't have to do the work either. So she will get all of the credit for doing her courses. And then I just worked with her school to create a schedule for her. So she's in school and then online. And so it is through 7 through 12, but I know there's lots of online resources for younger children here in elementary school, lots of programs you can do. And I do know some kids who dual enroll in elementary school. It's challenging. But some homeschool parents who do that, it's more difficult. But I know homeschool parents who dual enroll elementary school students all the time. So it is possible.
And I'm supposed to make a post on this. I totally forgot.
Yeah.
Okay, copy us on your correspondence when you send it to legislators.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah, we can
here's-
document it.
Yeah. Okay, so here's how it has to work. That we as constituents have to report to our elected officials. So we email our USBE rep, our House rep, our senator, and they will individually get what is happening in their school districts that they represent. Like, oh, I'm
Make
seeing
sure
that-
you say you're a constituent on it.
Yes, I'm a constituent. My kid
And
is in this school
district.
leave the teacher's name out of it. It is not about the teacher. It's not about the principal. It's about the pattern. It's about the policy violation.
Mhm.
So the policy violation that's happening is this: my kid cannot get the education she needs because of staffing, or my principal's not doing this, or this is not happening. But document those instances, send them to the individual legislators, USBE rep, and copy Utah Parents United on it. Because here's what we do.
Katie, what email address do you want him to do? Story? Do you want him to do contact? What email address
Just
do you want him to send it to?
Let's do contact@utahparentsunited.org.
Is that one good?
That one I
that
think is the
work?
best.
That,
Yeah,
Or story? Which one?
contact it.
utahparentsunited.org.
You guys are great.
If you put story, then they don't get lost in all the.
Yes.
Okay,
So we're gonna
okay.
story.
So
STORY, because you're sharing your story right with us. So story@utahparentsunited.org.
okay, so here's the piece then of why you're copying us on this. Because then what we do is we document everything that's happening across the state. So as your individual legislator is seeing what's happening in your district, they're not seeing what's happening in other districts. So what we have the opportunity to do is we collect the stories from every House district, every Senate district, every USBE district, is we then take that, the compilation of these experiences, and we show them to the USBE.
Mhm.
We show them to House leadership. We show them to Senate leadership and say, here is the pattern of what's happening across the state. This is not an isolated incident. There's a pervasive problem demonstrated here.
There's
By-
a systemic problem.
Yes, yes,
Everybody
yes.
loves to use that word, right?
Yes.
And
That
a
this,
great example of this is the critical race resolution against divisive
Oh.
theories that was
Mhm.
passed. Part of what convinced legislators so quickly to act and to form a resolution against divisive theories in Utah schools was that we were able to document the divisive theories were being taught in every school district in Utah. And without that documentation, it's a resolution that was passed in
HB 117, no,
2021.
HB.
oh, no, it's
SJR,
SJR, it's a Senate and Joint. HJR, House Joint Resolution.
During the special.
it
during
was
the
a special session, so that's why
The
it was,
extraordinary session.
oh, yeah.
Special
The
session.
extraordinary session
It was-
2021. It was,
Well,
it was,
yes,
yes, it had, yeah.
yeah, I can't think of the numbers. I'm getting them
I
lost.
don't know.
But it's either SJR or HJR, and
Yeah.
it was I can't remember the name.
Yeah.
I can't remember it, but it was May of 2001. 2021.
Any other questions we've got?
I have a question
Yeah.
about when you said, contacting or going straight to the above. My daughter, when we were in Texas, my husband was in the military.
God bless Texas.
Yeah. And so my daughter's dyslexia was caught at 7 years old. And in those schools down there, she had a resource class that was simply for dyslexia.
Mhm.
And they worked the Wilson program. It wasn't just here, read. It's gonna fix everything for you. It was the breakdown for the dyslexic brain. And from what I heard from her, because I was so stressed about us moving because of my husband's military career, I was like, I'm afraid because she's just gonna drop because she was still in elementary at the time. And she says, well, there was a federal law that was passed that was required that every school district, every school needed one of her. So like a dyslexic
Okay.
resource teacher, like not
Mhm.
just a straight resource, teaching the Wilson program because it's the one that is the best for dyslexics. How do we address that? Because that's been years since we've even been here. We've been here since 2018, and they threw her in a resource class. Special
Well,
education. Here, just read.
You'd have to identify what the law is specifically. So if you find the law
Okay.
and then I think that's a really great one
'Cause she's in
to
high school now,
look at.
but luckily,
Yeah.
she was able to have 6 years with this one-on-one every
One-on-one
morning, an hour. with-
So
I mean,
contact your USBE rep.
Sure.
Ask them if they can, so Utah State Board of Education, contact that rep, see if they can help identify the law here in Utah.
Yeah.
And say,
sure it was a federal one, that's why I'm just curious.
well, and so that's why they could probably help you research that, like help you find the answer, help you find out what the law is, and then find out if it's being followed here or not being followed.
Yeah.
But that would be a great, or even your school board rep.
Mhm.
I mean, that's
think-
where that's a policy issue where
Yeah.
you could go to your school board rep or your USBE rep and say, my understanding is that this is a law. Could you opine on this? Or could you help me understand this? Could you help me find this? Another way to go would be talk to the principal and say, are there resources in this school to help my child with this? Or this is a problem. Can you help me? Are there any
Mhm.
resources for me?
I think it's also a really great point when you can find an education issue that you need help researching or you have a question on that's not controversial, that's not divisive, that's not like I'm calling out the school, and you can have a positive interaction with your representative and start building relationships. Oh my goodness, do it.
Mhm.
Take advantage of that.
I know
Because
somebody teaching them, she's in
Yeah.
ninth grade, so it's like it's a little bit hard.
it gets trickier, but these are great ways to build relationships with people who can help you because you're gonna have another problem down the road. You'll already have built those relationships along the way.
Oh, yeah. And that's a good point. We maybe should have covered at the beginning is focus on building the relationship when you can. Buy them some swig cards. Like I seriously have gone into the front office of my kids' elementary school and like passed out swig cards. Like, oh, I'm sorry, my kindergartner did this. Like, here you go. Like, have a drink on me. It's not going to be the last time. So let's be best friends. So I've taken them flowers before. I've slipped cash into envelopes to teachers before. Like I seriously am trying to build.
Teacher appreciation.
Yeah,
building
yeah.
relationships.
But even with my local school board rep, I was like, hey, I have some questions. Like, can we talk about this? And I'll buy you your favorite drink and cookie from Swig. And she's like, you don't have to do that. I'll just come over to and she came over to my house and we talked for 2 hours about questions. Your school district site, whatever school district you're in, you go to your local school district site and type in like school board members, and there should be a map that helps you find out who represents you. And then
Yeah.
send them an email and like introduce yourself and building a relationship with them is worth its weight in gold.
Another great thing to do is find a like-minded group of parents that are in your community or your school and take them with you on your journey. We mentioned this in the slide presentation, but
some of the best meetings I've had with my USDE reps and others is in a library conference room with a group of parents. And they come, we ask for the meeting.
yeah.
We say, this is something we're all concerned about in education. We'd love to hear from you, some of the policies and some of the things that you're working on this issue. And it's really nice because it takes the focus off you specifically, and their job is to engage with their constituents. And so we don't necessarily come to an agreement. Brooke and I be like, oh wow, that we didn't agree on that at all. But I now felt she's laughing. She's like, the meeting you're talking about, Corinne, that feels like every meeting we go to. But the relationship is there, and I've had my school board member, text me or contact me and be like, okay, what do you guys think about this policy?
Yeah.
And I was like, we disagree on everything, but you're still asking me. And I think that that's something we can do. We can build those relationships. And I know parents who aren't leaders of a large parent organization who also have great relationships with these people. Just so you don't feel intimidated to think, well, of course they're going to answer Nicole's phone call. Of course they're going to answer Corinne's phone call. But I know so many parents and have so many friends that have these relationships, and they don't have a title behind their name, but they've built those relationships and have them. So don't feel like you can't do it just because you're not.
Yeah, everyone that we interact
Faith isn't
with,
on Facebook all the time.
everyone we interact with
Katie
is
has
like,
another one.
they want to hear from their constituents. They legit want to hear from their constituents. And so they're grateful when their constituents reach out almost without exception. Your elected officials want to hear from you, and they like to know who their constituents are.
Okay, it's 9 o'clock, but we can take, it's 9. It's 9.
Last
So-
question.
okay.
Can you clarify if our children's data is being collected in SEL programs? In contrast with Utah law that protects our child's data.
All right, so
Good about it.
So this is, there is the #1 data collector SEL program that exists in Utah is Panorama. And you can Google Panorama and you can find the website, you can look it up. The reason why this is there's two. There's two. I'll just be long, try and keep it brief. Panorama, because there's a state law, it's HB 103, and that law puts in parameters for what a school district can adopt for what they call an early warning system. And it's supposed to be a system that tracks academic benchmarks and then alerts the school if there's a child who's falling behind who may be at risk for not graduating. That was what the program was designed to do. And the legislation brought it in as a pilot program, and then over time it morphed, or actually when it was brought in, Panorama knew what they were doing because they put all these things in it. The only company in the state that qualifies and meets the metrics that are required to get the state funding is Panorama. So your school district has most likely adopted Panorama, or they've custom built their own system. So Davis School District is an example. They built their own data tracking system. And remember what it's called? Echo. I don't remember. Anyway, they built their own
It's
system.
like
Encore.
Esther. Yeah,
Encore.
okay.
Encore. And then there's Panorama. So Davis School District, they don't get state funding for their portal because they chose to build their own. And then there's Panorama. So we know that when you look at the privacy laws and FERPA laws, that all of the data in these databases can be unidentified. They claim that the data is protected because it is not identifiable. But with the types of computer programs that are out there, with the algorithms that exist now, it is completely conclusive that it is possible to de-identify and de-aggregate this data to make
reverse
it
engineer
reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
So if your child's data is in the Panorama system or in an Encore system or any type of, they use Canvas system, Aspire, there's lots of systems, but the Panorama one is the one that's scary because it tracks social and emotional behaviors, attitudes, values, beliefs, and it creates a psychological profile on your child. But the data can be deaggregated. So that is why these opt-outs are existing for parents. That's one of the reasons, not to mention the surveys are highly triggering. I would never allow my children to take a panorama survey or sharp survey because they can trigger all sorts of mental and emotional things, and they're extremely invasive. And they actually introduce concepts that I feel are not age appropriate to young children. So that is why you opt out. But that is the claim that they make to say your data is secure. And it's something that we're working on with the state legislature, because there are many legislators who are now researching ESG, right, which is your environment and social governance scores, and they're tied to social and emotional learning, or the data tracking on our kids, and how the data is then deaggregated to create those profiles on our children. And so the legislature is becoming more versed in this. So if you're concerned about the data collection on your child, first opt out of everything you can that collects data. And I know that there are parents who've opt out of Aspire, Annie being one of them. You opt out?
I have so much I could be saying.
Oh,
right
Annie has so much.
I'm just eating my grapes over here.
Annie's eating her grapes, so we don't have all night. We could do a whole other class. We could do
Yeah,
another
we
class
could
on
do
data.
another class. Yeah, that's a
So,
good idea.
We
That's a good idea.
let's do it. We should do a class on data. Like, let's plan it.
And
Let-
surveys, and surveys.
January.
The sharp survey,
Sharp
I could talk a
survey.
lot on
Oh
the
my
sharp
gosh,
survey.
the sharp survey. But bottom line is, opt your kid out of anything you can, and then let your legislator know
Yes.
why.
Copy your USB
Tell
rep,
them.
your House rep, your senator.
And
Make
then the
sure that
story.
they know that there's a systemic issue that you have.
Systemic
Yeah, this
problem.
is not an.
Okay.
This is not an isolated incident. This is a pervasive issue. Make sure your
Alright.
legislators know.
I think that's a wrap for us.
Okay, you guys,
thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you for being involved. Your children are going to be more successful because you are involved.
Yes.
So give yourselves a round of applause. Okay, thanks, guys.